You are listening to the Global Psychosis Network.
Oh, I'm so horny. I hate it when they take commercial break. Nothing makes me wet like the Jimbo Trashy Podcast. I touch myself every episode. I don't know how much longer I can wait. I'm gonna come so hard when they come back on the air. God, I love it when he says, "Welcome back." Oh, yeah. Oh, Jimbo. Ah.
You are listening to the Global Psychosis Network.
Welcome back to the Jimbo Trashy Podcast. So, Clive, I wanted to ask you, would you say a record deal is like identical from the UK to the US as far as the bullshit you have to deal with? Or is there different little things that the UK might do differently than the US would?
I think now with every worldwide, I think record companies, all they want, it's like everything. It's like any corporate company that it's financial. It's all run financially now, and they look at the books more than they look at the art. £1 million is worth a lot more than they. What record companies don't want to do is spend time nurturing an up and coming artist. Well, like they used to do.
So they want your art. They want your image already set in stone with the fan base.
Well, absolutely, and that's why it's more. You know what? We can actually go with that. You know, as artists, we can actually go with that, and we can create that ourselves. You know, I think that if there's any advice I'd give to any band, the up and coming band, you create something that the record company doesn't have to change. You know, you create something where they go, fuck, it's already here. You know, we've already got it. You know, we don't have to do any work. You know, the more work the record company has to do, the more they wash their hands with it these days. They want something that they know is going to happen. And that, I think about this often, and I think about it probably in fact, I would say that I think about it every day. What is going to happen in the music industry next? Because what happened when Cliff Richard was massive and the Beatles were massive and everything else was punk. In 1976, punk happened. And it's very weird because I know that if punk happened now, it'd probably be classed as crass, and it's all happened before and everything else. But I think something has to happen that's very similar to that, that's going to take the record industry by the scruff of the neck and say, you're not in control anymore. The artist is in control again, which is exactly what happened with punk. It became that the record company were telling the artist what to do and what to play and what records to release, whereas punk said, this is what you listen to this is what we're doing, blah blah blah. And that's what fucking, you know there's no better story than the Sex Pistols signing to EMI and then not on EMI. You know, they signed for EMI for a day. And then signed to Virgin the day after, because EMI just couldn't handle them. You know what I mean? And I think that it's difficult to know what's going to happen next, but something like that has to happen. It's either complete meltdown of the music industry, or something takes it by the scruff of the neck and says, "Here we go." And of course, there are artists that are trying to do that right now. I mean, and have been trying to do it for a long time. Nine Inch Nails, Marilyn Manson, a lot of the bands that you think that are kind of groundbreaking in their approach to style and sound and everything else, and unfortunately, unless you've got record companies behind that kind of thing, people kind of think, whoa, what's it? You know, they can't really handle it. And then when a record company says, wow, this is the next big thing, everybody goes, yeah, we believe you.
I like to think that, with the internet now, that we don't really need major record labels. I kind of cross my fingers because I feel like I'll probably never get it signed to a major record label, just because what I'm doing is just kind of like out there, and I don't know if there's a market for it. You know, I mean, I do like the conspiracy realm type stuff. Not that that's all I do, but I think that's what it's kind of got my name out there, is just doing the Illuminati type stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know if they want that to be marketed though. So.
Oh, of course they won't. You know, of course they won't want that to be marketed, but because truth, people don't like the truth. That's the moment that I've watched
Yeah.
loads of stuff on that. You know, I mean, I've watched loads of documentaries on all that sort of stuff. But and you know, the more you know about that stuff, the more ridiculous it becomes, and people don't want you to, the general public, to know about that ridiculousness. You know, and they prefer them to go along and. Unfortunately, be like little mice running along and following everybody else.
Yeah, I like to. I mean, okay, so with the internet, I think, you know, like artists like 9 Inch Nails, like you mentioned, it's going to become a. I mean, this is how I foresee it. I could be completely wrong on this, but maybe just in the future where we have a situation where artists just establish themselves through doing their own content and just have their own studios at home, and they promote themselves through the internet on their own. Maybe they have a street team of people that help them or whatnot. But
yeah.
I think the corporate days of like people controlling what artists do, as far as like the up and coming artists, I think that's gone.
That's beautiful. I think that's the best thing that's ever happened to music.
It's kind of utopian, but
Yeah.
maybe that's. I mean, that's how I kind of see it.
Do you know what? Andy Warhol said 15 minutes of fame. Everybody will have 15 minutes of fame, and guess what? They have. You know, you've got YouTube now. If you do a video now on YouTube and you make it a good video, people will watch it. And so you've got your own, everybody in the world have got their own TV channel. You know? And if it's good enough, people will watch it. And even if it's crap enough, people will watch it. You know, that's what it's all about.
Then they really want to watch it because they want to tear it apart, right?
Absolutely.
Like this podcast, the first podcast I ever did for the Jimbo Trashy Podcast was like the most unprofessional thing. We came home from a bar. I mean, this dude, you might have known him, or you might have seen him. His name's Steve. But I mean, he came over here before, and we just got like shit-faced drunk. Came over here and just like, hey, let's do a podcast, man.
Wow.
Set up a microphone and just, we had no topics, nothing, just nothing set in stone. No commercial breaks to kind of like give us a piss break or nothing. Just went at it. And then, I mean, that was just like the worst podcast ever. But it was episode 1, and you just evolve from that point.
Absolutely.
You know?
You make it better.
And I mean, I've done music videos and stuff, and I mean, a lot of my videos, I mean, my first video I ever did was not HD, but I just got this camera right here. It's in this bag, but if you want to take a look at it, it's a Canon 650D. So, I mean, if you ever want to do any sort of video work and whatnot, I could use that for you and film it, whatnot.
Cool. Yeah, because we did speak that we were going to be doing some stuff together, because I think that's where I'm going to bring IITyme, my partner in the studio, in.
Yeah, IITyme Chris. I called him Chris at the beginning of the podcast, but unbeknownst to me, he's IITyme Chris, or Chris 2 times, however you want to say it. But we haven't heard from you yet, so I wanted to ask you, how did you and Clive meet?
We have mutual friends.
And how, like, when did you guys meet, like last week? Or, I mean, was this years in the making now? Or
No, as soon as he came over for his tour, I drive around with them, hang out with them.
what year was this?
2011, I think, first
Yeah,
time.
it's about that.
Yeah.
So it was pretty recently then.
But I've been hanging out with bands since I was about 16.
So you do a lot of like roadie work and stuff, and like
Pretty
sound
much.
techs type things. Okay.
Pretty much everything.
Everything. Okay. So,
Well,
I'm not
I've just got to let you know the what I've got going with Chris at the moment. We're actually in the process of opening a studio in LA, and Chris has worked since 2011, and I've been working with Chris, and he's very, very passionate about music. He knows his music, and he comes from more of the rap side of things. And so I'm thinking, we're opening a studio up, and I want this to be accessible for any genre of music, for all genres of music, and including film, post-audio, you know. So I want people involved within the studio that are into all the different genres and everything else, because, you know, the worst thing you can do is open a studio and it's like, oh, that's one musical style and that's it, and that's all we listen to. Chris is into the rap, and he's passionately into the rap, and that you know, it's not to say that he's the best, a musical expert, but yeah, he is a musical expert at the same time, because if you're passionately into something, I class that as being an expert in that field.
he's got the ear for it.
Absolutely. So that's why Chris is on board. And
Well, you know what, Chris,
tell us how great you
Sounds
are.
good to me.
IITyme Chris brought us together. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
I would have never met you if it wasn't for IITyme Chris
Yeah,
here,
yeah.
or Chris 2 times. We'll figure it out By the time we finish this podcast, we'll have it credited properly. But either way, I mean, he brought us together. So I mean, this guy right here, I'm telling you, this guy, he knows what's up. He sees something that's good and where it could go. And he's a visionary in a lot of ways. You know,
absolutely. Answer that.
Sounds good to me.
You'll take that.
He doesn't. We'll talk for him. He doesn't need to talk.
Yeah.
I don't talk much at all.
So is there any like wild like tour stories that you have from like your days back in the 80s that you can share that are
I could tell you some of them.
Oh yeah. Let two-time Chris tell it now.
We did a show in San Diego. I don't want to mention the band. After the show, there was about 10 of us. We go back to the hotel. We're in the jacuzzi, just kicking it. We get about 5 girls that jump the fence, jump in the jacuzzi, butt naked, and we have a good time all night.
We're just hoping that Chrissy's wife is not listening to this now.
And she won't.
But I've got to say now, at this point, it wasn't my band.
No, it wasn't.
Just tell her, hey, we didn't record that Jimbo Trashy podcast. It didn't work out. Jimbo didn't feel good.
I know why they call me two-time.
So that was with tell me, that wasn't with the other wedding room, no?
No.
Oh,
no,
good,
no.
good. Great stuff. Yeah,
Like I said, I don't want to give the band name away.
Fantastic.
Anything with you that you can remember, Clive?
I think as far as, and this is a little bit cleaner, but kind of the same. We did a video in Miami to a song called Heaven Knows, which was after The Promise. The Promise was the first hit, which went to #1 on the dance chart, of course, and then went to 11 on the major chart. And then we released a song called Heaven Knows, which didn't do quite so well, but we spent a lot more money on that, of course, because the record company said, well, we've had a hit record, let's spend a load of money on this new tune. And we did the video in Miami, and it was what a fantastic experience. We were actually touring at the same time. We were doing live shows around the Miami area and shot the video from the live tours, if you like. So parts of the video were from the live tours, and then we shot some by on the seafront and everything else. And just that whole experience was just mind-blowing, because obviously we'd never been to America before. I was born right near Manchester Airport, and I'd never been on an aircraft before I joined When in Rome. So going on an aircraft and going to America and then shooting a video in America, and then going on the beach in Miami and shooting a video, and it's just mind-blowing. And then of course this is a great story, because they were trying to get in touch with the other members. The record company were trying to get in touch with the other members of the band to go to New York to do the mixes. They couldn't get in touch with the other two, so they got in touch with me and said, do you want to go to New York to do the mixes? I remember I've never been on I've been on a plane to come to LA to record the 3 tracks for the album, and I said, oh yeah, of course I'll go. So I flew to New York, and I worked with Michael Brower, who is he was at the time, and I think he still is quite the remix fella. He's the man to go to for remixes and stuff. So I worked with him for 10 days. So it was the experiences of working within the in fact, we worked at Quad Studios in New York, which was beautiful. And I used to walk. And a funny story about that was that I used to walk through from Gramercy Park, which is where I was staying in Manhattan, up to the studios Quad Studios in near Central Park. And when I'd reach the studio, they'd say, "Which way did you walk from the hotel?" And I said, "I'd go that way." He said, "You were walking through some really rough areas of New York." But I was walking. I had a straw hat on, a pair of shorts, and I was saying hello to everybody and good morning to everybody, and everybody was really cool. I had no hassle whatsoever.
Governor.
Yeah, good morning, Governor. How you doing? And I really had no trouble whatsoever.
Well, we are back on the Jimbo Trashy Podcast.
Everything is a conspiracy.
Everything is a conspiracy.
Everything is a conspiracy. Everything is a conspiracy.
Everything is a conspiracy.
You are listening to the Global Psychosis Network. You are listening to the Global Psychosis Network.
Welcome back to the Jimbo Trashy Podcast. So, Clive, in 1990, you guys broke up with Win and Rome over musical differences. What were the conflicts that kind of arose?
You know what, I think people have asked this before, and mainly it's because we were living so closely together. When we recorded the album in London, I was staying in the same room with Mike. We shared a hotel room, and we were like brothers. And everybody knows what it's like when familiarity breeds contempt, and a brother becomes they start to get on your tits, for want of a better word. We were great friends, Mike and I, and because Andrew was living, he lived in his own place in London. Mike and I were sharing this hotel room. Well, and that was over 6 months. And there'd be a day when we'd be getting on really well, and then the day after we wouldn't. Just there were daft stuff, just ridiculous stuff. But I always, musically and lyrically, I always got on with Andrew more than I did with Mike. I think I had more of affinity, although you could say Andrew was the type of character that wanted to be a star without putting the work in, if you like. Which for me was okay. I thought, yes, he's the blagger. He's the man that's going to get us the record deal. It doesn't matter whether he gets involved with the writing process. And so, consequently, because I didn't deal with him as much as I dealt with I didn't deal with Mike as much as I dealt with Andrew, or I dealt more with Mike than I did with Andrew. I thought it was fresh every time I got together with Andrew. It was a fresher, there was a fresher approach, if you like, or a fresher way of writing. And then we decided that Andrew and I, it was one of those things. We just got on each other's nerves. We started to get on each other's nerves, and something had to give. And Andrew and I decided to stay together, and we went round to Mike's house one day and said, it's not working. Unfortunately, Andrew and I are going to stay as When in Rome, and unfortunately, you're no longer in the picture. And then, of course, we've got the trademark dispute, which I don't know whether you want to talk about, but that's.
I was going to bring that up in a little bit.
Cool. Yeah.
So, do you still keep in touch with Andrew or Mike?
Yeah, well, Andrew toured with us in 2011. He got married in June. I went to the wedding. We sang The Promise at the wedding with Steve Norman from Spandau Ballet playing guitar. Then he had to go on his honeymoon, which was at the same time as the tour, and of course the lady wins because he got married to her, and so they had to go on the honeymoon, and we totally understood that, and I came out and did the tour myself. But in fact, on Saturday we Skype every other day, Andrew and I. The next tour that he's going to be on is summer 2013, and that will be When in Rome back together as a full full force again.
He's still in the UK?
He's still in the UK, in London, yeah.
So the legal problems with keeping the name When in Rome, what obstacles did you have to deal with as far as that?
It's a daily...
It's still going on?
Absolutely, it's a daily obstacle. Our ex-keyboard player, of course, is trying to stop us in any way he can from touring, because in a nutshell, what's happened is all of us, we toured after we kind of went our separate ways. I mean, the nasty thing to say is that would be to say that we actually fired Mike, but really, what happened was that Andrew and I decided to stay together as When in Rome, and Mike was no longer with us. So we actually went out on tour to Brazil in 1992 with a new keyboard player. Then, of course, after that tour, because we'd had the hit record and nobody really, we didn't have a record deal anymore, we couldn't sell records anymore, so consequently there was no call to tour between 92 and 2004. So none of us were touring. Mike was not touring. I believe that he was actually writing music for corporate companies and stuff like that. I had my daughter in 1999, so I had to get a proper job and pay her way, if you like. So then in 2004, in fact, I was in contact with Michael in 2003, all the way through 2003 about the film. He actually alerted me to the fact that they were going to use it, the promise in the film Napoleon Dynamite, and so we were talking all the way through that year 2003 about the deal, how much we were getting on the deal, what the percentages and everything else were, and then in 2004 when the film was released, I didn't hear from him again, and I was watching television at about 1 o'clock in the morning in bed at home in the UK. Daryl Hannah comes running on stage at the MTV Film Awards, and she said, "Oh, I'm losing my voice. I've been shouting for Napoleon Dynamite," and it actually went on to win Film of the Year for MTV. So kind of I knew at that point that it was going to be a successful movie. And the fact is, right now, after the fact, we know now that it cost $600,000 to make, and it's true. I think it's $50 million. It's taken at the box office, so it's a successful movie. So what's happened is Mike was in contact with me all the way through 2003 about the film, everything else. Film was released. We're over in the UK. Mike lives in Dallas by this point. I'm sorry, I'd missed that point. He'd come out to live in Dallas, and he was contacted by an agent in the US to say what's happening with When in Rome. And unfortunately, he told that agent that we had retired and couldn't sing anymore. We were no longer in the business, blah blah blah. And so the agent said, "We still want to do this thing, so can we get some kind of a band together?" So they did get a band together, and which didn't sound anything like When in Rome. It did the actual the actual sound, the meaning behind the band was lost. But unfortunately, they were selling tickets. They were going out on tour and selling tickets for shows where people were actually buying the tickets and believing it was the original When in Rome. So it's very, very difficult. And of course, now we've come round it. We toured in 2011 as the original band again because of the success of the movie.
Is Rob part of your version, or is he part of the other version?
Robbie's part was part of that original version, but I mean, give him his due. I can only go off what I know, and I think the facts are that he was told that we'd retired and we're no longer in the music industry anymore, and unfortunately they've done that with the record company. The Mike's version of the band have signed to a record company, so they've actually gone to a record company and said, "We are When in Rome." They've not mentioned the fact that we were the original members and the original writers, and it's the very same thing. And like most human beings, we're lazy. We don't really care to delve into what's behind this and what the facts are. And the same with Mike's been given the copyright. He copywrote the name in 2010 when he knew that we were going to be coming over to tour. He actually copywrote the name. So what's happened is the government organisation which gives trademarks out have not looked into it properly. They've not thought, should we give this fella the trademark? Is there somebody else that might be involved that might come against this trademark? Unfortunately, they've not done the homework. And I actually opposed the trademark. We spent money opposing the trademark before it was given to Mike. And
is that an expensive process? Or?
Well, it's $300. Whether that's an I would say $300 is expensive. That in my world, $300 is expensive. In some people's world, it might be peanuts. But you've paid money to a company, to a government agency, to look into something, and they give him the trademark. So they've taken my money and given the trademark to somebody. And I'm thinking, I've given money to somebody to look into that. That's what that money's for, I believe. I've paid $300 for a company to do some research to see whether that name is can be used as a trademark, or does anybody else have the claim on it. And of course, we have 99.9% claim on it, because common law says that we actually own that name, because we've been collecting royalties on that record, on all the records that we released as When in Rome, under that name, When in Rome. And really nobody should try and stop the writers of those songs from performing and making a living out of the work, if you like, the work that they've done.
So can you guys, do you think you guys could be in the same room together, or are you guys at that
Do you know what, if it was up to him, if he called me tonight and said, Clive, do you want to meet? I would go and meet him.
So it's not that hostile then between you two?
From my point of view, it's not. But I've actually made that. I've put my hand out. I've said, let's get together, and it's just like a no-go. And I think it's mainly because he has definitely pulled the wool over people's eyes and gone out as he's actually gone out as the original When in Rome. And then because we've kind of, in his world, reared our ugly heads and said, wait a minute, we wrote the tunes, we were involved with the original album, we are the original band. He's got, whoa, I think it's the truth has come out, and he's I don't know what's going on, but he's doing it in all the wrong ways as far as I'm concerned.
How did the whole Napoleon Dynamite thing come together? Like, how did they contact him for the song, or how does that work?
Well, because Mike was in obviously here in Dallas, Texas. The film was made in Preston, Idaho, by a fella called Jared Hess. He's the director of the movie, and that, obviously he's from the 80s. He's a child of the 80s, if you like, and it must have been one of his favourite tunes of that period. So I think what he was obviously trying to invoke in that movie was that time in the 80s, and of course he used Forever Young by, was it Alphaville that did Forever Young? I think it was.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, they used a lot of tunes from that period, and he obviously wanted to use the tune because it was one of his favourites, and wanted to use it in the movie. And contacted, because Mike was the closest, he lived here out in Dallas, and he contacted him through.
So they contacted him first?
It might have been through. I'm not absolutely 100% sure of the details, but I imagine what they would do is they'd contact the record company first. They'd contact Virgin, and then Virgin would say, "Well, Mike Florial, the keyboard player, lives in Dallas, Texas. He's your nearest man to deal with." So then they obviously contacted him. Then he contacted me, and then Mike and I were talking about it and everything else.
So they can just contact one member of a band and say, "Hey, do you want to let us use this?" And then the other band members don't have no say in it.
Well, we have to give our go ahead. Yeah.
Okay.
All the other writers, if one of us had have said no, you can't use it, then they couldn't have done it.
We'll finish this up on the next part after this commercial break on the Jimbo Trashy Podcast.
Everything is a conspiracy.
Everything is a conspiracy. Everything is a conspiracy.
out the latest sounds from the occult experimental rock project Elvis on Acid with their second album release, Prehistoric Psychonaut.
With historic obligations, we've come so far. We're cutting away the spiritual line. Consolation, they don't care who you are. You're damning us to hell, it's written in the stars.
Follow Elvis on Acid on Twitter @Elvis on Acid. Go to youtube.com/Elvis on Acid to hear the latest. Global Psychosis Entertainment, Dark Jam Records, and Elvis on Acid are not responsible for any violent revolutions, drug overdoses, or attempted suicides that may occur after listening. This ad has been brought to you by Global Psychosis Entertainment and Dark Jam Records. Copyright 2012.